Imagine a courtroom packed with heavy hitters, cameras flashing, the jury watching, the prosecutor leaning in. A man takes the stand under immunity. His name is Kenneth Copeland, known to many as Lil Woody. The room goes silent. Then he says it, "I lied. I made things up." He confesses to involvement in shootings. He admits that everything he told the police for years was smoke and mirrors. Accusations, stories, names thrown around just to stay out of jail. The people's hero for the prosecution suddenly turns into their worst nightmare. But the story doesn't end with a confession. Because as the truth, or his version of it, spills out, something darker emerges. This wasn't about justice. It was about control. About power. About who writes the story. What happens when the key witness becomes the one who pulls the rug from under the prosecution and walks away free while the case collapses? What happens when the truth becomes more dangerous than the crimes themselves? Today, on T-Hub Media, we peel back the layers of deception, chaos, and betrayal behind the headlines. What started as an open and shut case spiraled into courtroom theater, and now the government's agents are watching every move. Because when you play both sides, you risk becoming a target yourself. Stay with me, because what you think you know might be the biggest lie of all. From the very beginning, Atlanta's streets had their own rules. Loyalty meant everything. Betrayal meant death. And no one embodied the dangerous intersection of fame, power, and violence quite like the figures who ran the city's underground music and street scene. Lil Woody, YSL, YFN, these weren't just names in the headlines. They were a world where alliances shifted like quicksand, where every move could be your last. It all came to a head in the cold months of 2015. Donovan Big Nut Thomas, known on the streets simply as Big Nut, was a central figure. He wasn't just another hustler. He was a kingpin, someone whose decisions rippled through entire neighborhoods. He thought he was untouchable in his own territory. He was wrong. On January 10, 2015, Big Nut sat in a barbershop he considered safe, a neighborhood where he had grown up, where everyone knew him. But safety is a fragile illusion in a city controlled by rival factions. A car pulled up. Shots rang out. In an instant, Big Nut was dead. Two others, including a 14-year-old, were wounded. Witnesses later recounted his final words, "Thug had me killed." Words that would echo for years in courtrooms, police investigations, and social media. Words that would make their way to the center of a legal storm surrounding Young Thug and YSL. The assassination sent shockwaves. The location alone was a statement. No one, not even a street king in his own backyard, was untouchable. Paranoia gripped both sides. Intelligence operations began immediately. Surveillance became routine. Safe houses were mapped. Escape routes memorized. Every phone call was scrutinized. In this game, knowing your enemy's next move wasn't just advantageous, it was survival. Retaliation was swift. Within hours, multiple properties connected to Woody's associates were attacked. Shots fired at the wrong house, then corrected, a stark warning to everyone involved. Innocent people were collateral damage, the streets trembled, and law enforcement immediately took notice. What was supposed to be a contained feud escalated into an all-out war, one that would define Atlanta's underground for years. Investigators saw the patterns. They noticed the military-like organization of both YSL and YFN. This wasn't random violence, it was calculated. Orders were given and executed without question. Every attack, every surveillance operation, every escape plan was part of a broader strategy. Both sides knew law enforcement would eventually intervene. They were prepared, but so was the city's police force. One of the critical breaks came from the smallest detail, a rental car. The vehicle used in Big Nut's murder had been rented using false identification. But thanks to surveillance footage, investigators were able to trace it back to Woody. It was a paper trail that tied him directly to the crime scene. Ballistics, DNA, and physical evidence further solidified the link. This was the first real thread that could unravel the network behind the killings. Months later, Woody's own choices would make him an even bigger target for law enforcement. In April 2015, he was caught with a Diamondback .223 assault rifle at a community center. The weapon had been purchased by Lil D, a fellow YSL member. It wasn't just a simple weapons charge, it was federal. The implications were enormous. Woody's arrest wasn't just about the rifle. It was a chance for law enforcement to flip him, to gain insider access to a violent criminal organization. During his interrogation, Woody appeared eager to cooperate. He told stories about shootings, conspiracies, and the inner workings of YSL. But there was a catch. Much of what he said was fabricated. Fictional characters, imaginary crimes, exaggerated plots, all designed to protect himself. And yet, despite the lies, Woody was convicted on the federal weapons charges and sentenced to 5 years. Prison was brutal, even for someone like Woody. He was tested, stabbed, attacked, all because his reputation for cooperation and street credibility put him in a paradoxical position. He wasn't safe in the streets, and he wasn't entirely safe in prison. But he survived, and he left in 2019 with a new plan, a rap career. The irony was thick. A man publicly known as a federal informant tried to market himself as a street legend. Music videos featured helicopters, guns, and power displays. Interviews touted loyalty to YSL. The streets laughed, the hip-hop community was skeptical, and yet Woody persisted. He needed this credibility, this attention, because in his world, image was everything. But the law never forgot. His probation, prior arrests, and history of cooperation kept him under constant scrutiny. Even after release, Woody's interactions with law enforcement were a high-stakes game. Traffic stops, interrogations, and his social media activity ensured that every move was being watched. The risk wasn't just theoretical, it was real. Every post, every interview could be leveraged against him. And federal authorities were patient, calculating. They didn't rush. They observed, waited, and planned. The stage was set. Big Nut's assassination had been the opening act. The intelligence operations, retaliations, and federal scrutiny created a pressure cooker environment. Woody, with his criminal history, cooperation, and ambition, was now both a player and a pawn. And at the heart of it all was the question: how far could one man manipulate the system before the system fought back? Could Woody navigate a world where every lie, every exaggeration, every public statement was being cataloged, analyzed, and potentially weaponized against him? Or would his choices finally catch up with him in a way no amount of street smarts or celebrity could avoid? This was more than a story about crime. It was a story about power, deception, and survival. The kind of story that keeps entire cities on edge and turns courtrooms into stages for drama that rivals anything on TV. By 2020, Woody's world had shifted, but danger never left him. Even with the rap career and the brief celebrity that came with it, the streets still remembered his cooperation. The law still remembered it too. And in Atlanta, nothing stays buried forever. It started with a series of traffic stops. Each one was seemingly routine, but for Woody, routine had never been routine. Officers were always looking for any sign of illegal activity, any slip-up that could justify another arrest. The pressure was constant, psychological warfare at its finest. And in Woody's world, paranoia was survival. But Woody wasn't just surviving, he was plotting. Every public appearance, every interview, every social media post was carefully calculated to maintain relevance. He had become a spectacle, a walking contradiction, a man celebrated for taking down the prosecution while simultaneously hated for betraying the streets. It was a dangerous tightrope, and he was walking it without a net. Federal authorities, however, were far from idle. The YSL investigation was massive, spanning years and involving multiple agencies. The arrests in May 2022 weren't random. They were the result of meticulous planning. Young Thug and 27 alleged YSL members were indicted on RICO charges that shook the hip-hop community to its core. The indictment painted YSL not just as a record label but as a criminal street gang involved in murder, drug trafficking, and violent crimes stretching back to 2012. Woody wasn't on that initial indictment. That absence was telling. He had clearly been marked as a potential key witness for the prosecution. His past cooperation, his detailed knowledge of YSL's operations, and his prior confessions made him indispensable, if he could be trusted. And there's the rub. Woody's history was complicated. He had lied before, exaggerated stories, and created fictional characters during interrogations. His credibility was fragile at best. The prosecution knew this and made a strategic choice: grant him immunity. This move was meant to guarantee his testimony. Nothing he said on the stand could be used against him. The thinking went, which should have removed any hesitation. But Woody had never been predictable. When the trial began, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone knew Woody's role could make or break the case. Prosecutors leaned on him heavily, expecting detailed accounts of murders, conspiracies, and Young Thug's leadership within YSL. They were counting on his testimony to establish a clear chain of command within the gang. Woody, however, had other ideas. From the moment he took the stand, he became a hostile witness. His sarcastic comments, dismissive gestures, and confrontational demeanor immediately threw the courtroom into chaos. Every question from the prosecution seemed to irritate him. Every attempt to pin him down met with evasions or outright lies. It wasn't just uncooperative behavior, it was sabotage. The viral nature of his testimony was unexpected. Clips of Woody rolling his eyes, snapping back at prosecutors, and claiming memory problems spread across social media within hours. For the public, it was entertainment. For the prosecution, it was a nightmare. The very person they had relied upon to secure convictions was actively working against them. And then came the moment that shocked everyone. Woody fired his lawyer mid-testimony. He claimed she wasn't representing his interests. The judge struggled to maintain control. The jury stared in disbelief. Prosecutors looked like they'd been blindsided. The courtroom had turned into a stage, and Woody was the star of a show that no one could predict. But behind the theatrics lay a deeper game. Woody was carefully navigating his immunity deal while undermining the prosecution. Under cross-examination, he admitted that he had fabricated countless stories during prior interrogations. He had never committed crimes for Young Thug, and many of the people and events he described were fictional. Every admission chipped away at the prosecution's case, eroding their credibility piece by piece. This wasn't just courtroom chaos, it was a lesson in legal strategy. Woody understood the limits of his immunity and exploited them to their fullest. He could admit to previous lies and exaggerations without fear of prosecution, all while destroying the narrative the prosecutors had spent years constructing. Outside the courtroom, the fallout was enormous. Young Thug's defense team used every moment of Woody's testimony to their advantage. Every contradiction, every sarcastic remark, every claim of faulty memory was dissected, broadcast, and analyzed. The media coverage was intense, and social media amplified every detail. Fans and critics debated Woody's credibility, while the prosecution's reputation took a major hit. Yet, Woody's actions had consequences too. His antics made him a figure of intrigue, a viral sensation with a new kind of power. Podcasts, interviews, and online platforms offered him opportunities for fame and income. But this celebrity was double-edged. Every appearance, every statement online became a potential weapon for federal authorities. Nothing went unnoticed, and nothing went unrecorded. The YSL trial, for all its chaos, revealed something important about federal prosecution. Building a case around a single witness, no matter how knowledgeable, is inherently risky. Woody's history, personality, and willingness to manipulate the system exposed a critical vulnerability. It also forced federal prosecutors to confront the reality that even the most carefully planned cases can unravel in unexpected ways. For Woody, the courtroom drama was just one layer of a much larger narrative. The streets still remembered his cooperation. His previous alliances were fragile. Loyalty, in the world he inhabited, was a currency he no longer fully possessed. Every move was scrutinized, every interaction a potential trap. Survival meant staying alert, balancing public attention, and constantly calculating risk. The irony was stark. Woody had helped Young Thug secure freedom while simultaneously placing himself in more danger than ever. By turning against the prosecution, he had earned celebrity status, but he had also drawn federal attention like never before. Prosecutors now had a personal and professional incentive to pursue him. They had been embarrassed, their resources had been wasted, and they were not likely to forget. And so, Woody lived in a paradox. Free from immediate imprisonment, yet perpetually under scrutiny. A viral sensation, yet a target. Street credibility tarnished, legal credibility ambiguous. Every choice carried weight, every public appearance risked exposure. He had created a life on the edge, one that could collapse in an instant. Behind the scenes, federal investigators were quietly building new cases. The leaked interrogation tapes, Woody's public statements, and his admitted fabrications provided a roadmap. Every lie, every inconsistency, every exaggeration could be dissected, cataloged, and used in potential future prosecutions. The question became, how long could Woody maintain this balance? How long could he navigate celebrity, street reputation, and federal scrutiny without tipping into catastrophe? Every day was a test of timing, judgment, and luck. And luck, as Woody would soon discover, has a limit. Even as he cultivated fame and influence, Woody remained a marked man. The federal government doesn't forget. They are patient, methodical, and relentless. For every viral moment, every public triumph, the shadow of potential prosecution loomed larger. And yet, Woody continued. He appeared on podcasts. He gave interviews. He posted on social media. Each appearance was a gamble, a chance to build income and notoriety, or a trap waiting to be sprung. The tension between opportunity and danger created a suspense that captivated everyone watching, both in the courtroom and beyond. This was a man living on borrowed time, aware of the stakes, yet unafraid to play the game his way. Each day brought new challenges, friends he could no longer trust, legal threats he could not ignore, and the ever-present gaze of federal authorities. For Woody, life had become a constant balancing act, where one misstep could erase fame, freedom, and security all at once. Even after the courtroom chaos, Woody's life didn't calm down. If anything, the storm had only intensified. His celebrity status gave him visibility, but with visibility came vulnerability. Every step he took was being watched by fans, the media, and federal authorities. He had become a public figure in a world where discretion had always been survival. The streets remembered. While Woody had helped young Thug and others avoid serious convictions, the street code didn't forgive easily. Cooperation with law enforcement carries a heavy price, and in Atlanta, rumors spread fast. Some celebrated him as a clever strategist. Others labeled him a traitor, a snitch, someone whose reputation could never recover. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore in that world. Woody's past continued to haunt him. The shootings, the drug deals, the alliances with YSL, all of it was still on record, and all of it was potential leverage for authorities. His celebrity provided a layer of protection, but it also made him a high-value target for both law enforcement and anyone seeking revenge. Every interview, every social media post was like walking a tightrope over a pit of danger. One misstep could trigger a chain reaction with serious consequences. In the months following the trial, Woody's focus shifted. He attempted to monetize his notoriety. Interviews, podcast appearances, and YouTube videos brought attention and income. But the exposure also brought risks. Federal prosecutors were patient, but they were not blind. Every statement Woody made, every exaggerated anecdote, every detail about YSL operations could be scrutinized, cross-referenced, and potentially used against him. And the feds were indeed watching. They had resources, patience, and motivation. Woody's sabotage of the YSL case had embarrassed them, and professional pride can be a powerful motivator. They began quietly investigating potential perjury and false statements. Every public appearance became a calculated risk. One slip, one exaggeration, one inconsistency could give federal authorities the opening they needed. Meanwhile, Woody's personal life became increasingly complicated. Relationships were strained, especially given his previous girlfriend's arrest for attempting to manipulate evidence on his behalf. That incident illustrated just how far he was willing to involve others in his schemes, but it also highlighted the danger of depending on anyone in his orbit. The streets don't forget, and federal authorities don't forgive. His choices had consequences that extended beyond himself. The environment around him was changing too. Atlanta's street dynamics had shifted during his time in federal custody and after his viral courtroom appearance. New players emerged, alliances shifted, and old enemies still lingered. Woody's past actions, once tactical moves, were now potential liabilities. Every interaction could be a trigger, every former ally could be a threat. Paranoia wasn't just an attitude, it was a survival mechanism. Social media amplified everything. Woody's online presence, while a source of income, also functioned as a double-edged sword. Analysts and investigators could monitor his activity, noting patterns, timing, and even social connections. His every post was potential evidence. But Woody seemed to relish the attention. It was almost as if the adrenaline of public scrutiny had replaced the danger of street life. He had moved from hiding in plain sight to controlling his visibility, yet the risk was omnipresent. Rumors began to circulate, some unverified, some partially true, about federal prosecutors planning a fresh wave of charges against Woody. There was speculation about perjury, about violating the terms of his previous immunity, and even whispers of a federal RICO case targeting YSL members, including him. The possibility of facing a federal RICO indictment loomed large. Federal RICO charges carry serious sentences, sometimes decades or even life imprisonment. Woody had made his moves in state court, but the federal system operates differently. Immunity at the state level offered no protection federally. Inside Woody's inner circle, tension grew. His celebrity status attracted opportunists and sycophants, but trust was fragile. He needed allies, but any close relationship could also be a risk. Who could he trust? Who was still loyal? And who might betray him to federal authorities for leverage or personal gain? The constant uncertainty weighed heavily, and Woody knew that mistakes in this environment could be fatal. Meanwhile, the media continued to cover him relentlessly. Clips of his courtroom antics circulated endlessly. Analysts dissected his every statement. Hip-hop fans debated his credibility. The public spectacle he had created became a permanent fixture in the cultural conversation. Woody's persona was now bigger than just him. It had become a symbol of audacity, manipulation, and survival in a high-stakes world. Federal authorities didn't act impulsively. They were methodical, studying every statement, every action, and every connection. Their goal was not only justice but also a demonstration, a warning to any witness or informant who might consider undermining a case. Woody's actions in the YSL trial had set a precedent, and the federal government was determined to ensure that precedent didn't encourage future interference. Inside the courtroom, Woody had already shown his mastery of chaos. He had twisted the narrative to his advantage, undermining prosecutors while technically staying within the bounds of his immunity deal. But outside the courtroom, the stakes were higher. There was no immunity for mistakes. Every move was being evaluated for potential risk. The feds were patient. Woody was unpredictable. It was a dangerous combination. And yet, Woody seemed undeterred. He continued building his brand, expanding his reach, and embracing the notoriety that had come with defying federal prosecutors. He had become a symbol of audacious survival, a man who had outmaneuvered the system once. But survival in this world is never permanent. The stakes only grow higher, and the pressure never diminishes. Speculation about federal RICO charges continued to swirl. The idea that Woody could face decades in prison for federal violations was real. The feds could compile evidence from his past admissions, social media activity, and public statements. Unlike state-level immunity, federal charges leave no protection for prior cooperation. And Woody knew it. Every post, every podcast, every interview could potentially be used against him. The streets, the courts, and the public all watched. Woody had created a persona, a narrative, a spectacle. But the danger was real. His life was a balancing act between celebrity and survival, visibility and vulnerability, audacity and recklessness. One misstep could shatter everything. And yet, Woody played on. He remained a figure of intrigue, a man whose story captivated the public and terrified authorities. His next moves would determine whether he remained untouchable or became a cautionary tale. Every choice mattered. Every interaction carried weight. And while Woody appeared confident, the pressure was relentless. The streets didn't forgive, and the federal government didn't forget. The next chapter of his story would test his cunning, his instincts, and his ability to survive in a world where one wrong move could mean everything. After the courtroom storm, Woody thought he had the upper hand. He had manipulated the system, embarrassed federal prosecutors, and walked away from one of the biggest trials in Georgia history with his life intact. But the calm after the storm was deceptive. Federal investigators are not like street rivals. They have patience, resources, and a long memory. And Woody had just painted a target on his back. The streets had not forgotten either. Cooperation with law enforcement, no matter how cleverly executed, is a permanent mark in the eyes of Atlanta's underground. Woody had gained notoriety, but that notoriety came with consequences. Every glance over the shoulder, every unexpected phone call, every knock at the door carried potential danger. Paranoia, once a tool for survival, became a constant companion. Even in the world of hip-hop, trust is currency. Woody's attempt to monetize his fame with interviews, podcasts, and social media clout brought money and attention, but it also attracted opportunists. Friends became questionable allies, and allies became potential threats. In a city where rumors spread faster than truth, Woody had to navigate a minefield of loyalty, betrayal, and suspicion. Every conversation could be overheard, every meeting could be surveilled. The federal government was methodical. The embarrassment from the YSL case wasn't something prosecutors could ignore. They wanted accountability, and they wanted a message sent. Woody's previous immunity deal protected him from prosecution regarding his trial testimony, but it did not cover a lifetime of lies, false statements, and fabrications outside the courtroom. Every past confession, every exaggerated story to federal agents, became a potential weapon in their arsenal. Rumors of perjury investigations began circulating quietly. Sources close to the case suggested that a separate team of federal prosecutors was combing through Woody's previous statements, looking for inconsistencies, gaps, or outright lies. The goal was clear: build a case that could hold up in court, a case that would demonstrate that immunity cannot be a shield for manipulation. Woody had played a dangerous game, and the feds were preparing their response. Social media made things even more complicated. Woody's public persona, while profitable, left a trail. Every post, every story, every interview could be dissected by investigators. What he might have seen as building his brand, they saw as providing evidence. Analysts could map his movements, confirm his contacts, and compare his words to prior statements. The visibility that gave him power also made him vulnerable. Inside his circle, tension was mounting. Not everyone was comfortable being associated with a figure who had openly defied federal authorities. Some were genuinely loyal, others were calculating, and some were quietly watching to see how far Woody would push his luck. In Atlanta's underground, information is currency. A whispered conversation could easily reach the ears of investigators or rivals, creating potential chaos. Woody's life became a constant balancing act. Fame, money, survival, and legal jeopardy existed simultaneously. Any misstep could trigger a chain reaction. A false statement could lead to perjury charges. An unguarded social media post could provide evidence for false statements, and any miscalculated street move could invite retaliation. Every decision mattered. Every interaction carried consequences. Meanwhile, federal authorities studied him like chess pieces on a board. They knew his patterns, his history, his alliances, and his vulnerabilities. Their patience was a tool. They weren't in a hurry. They could wait for the right moment, observe his actions, and strike when the timing favored them. For Woody, every day was a tightrope walk. One slip, and the consequences could be catastrophic. The streets and the law weren't the only threats. His personal life was entangled with danger as well. Past relationships, particularly with his former girlfriend who had faced arrest for trying to protect him, illustrated how deeply his actions impacted those around him. Trust became a fragile commodity. Friends and lovers were potential liabilities, and reliance on anyone could result in unexpected exposure or betrayal. Rumors continued to swirl. Some said federal prosecutors were planning a new RICO case targeting YSL members, possibly including Woody. The idea of facing a federal RICO indictment is not trivial. Federal RICO convictions carry decades-long sentences, sometimes even life imprisonment, and are built to dismantle organized networks. Woody's immunity deal from the state trial offered zero protection at the federal level. What had been a victory in state court could easily become a nightmare in federal court. Despite the looming threats, Woody continued to court attention. His interviews were entertaining, his social media posts were engaging, and his presence in the hip-hop world was undeniable. He had become a symbol of audacity, a man who had outmaneuvered the system. Fans cheered his cleverness. Critics warned of impending consequences. And somewhere in the background, federal prosecutors prepared their next move. Paranoia became an essential tool for survival. Woody knew that in this environment, even small mistakes could escalate into serious legal or street-level consequences. He had to manage his public persona carefully, balance his relationships, and constantly assess threats. Every conversation, every meeting, every post had to be filtered through the lens of potential danger. The stakes were higher than ever. Woody was no longer just a viral sensation or a street figure. He was a high-profile individual under federal scrutiny. The attention he garnered meant that every action, intentional or accidental, could be observed, recorded, and potentially used in court. And federal prosecutors are masters at piecing together patterns, establishing intent, and building cases that withstand scrutiny. Speculation about potential federal action created a psychological burden. Woody had survived the YSL trial in a dramatic fashion, but now, the waiting game was different. There were no live cameras, no cheering fans. There were only federal investigators analyzing data, witnesses, and past statements. The stakes were invisible but omnipresent. Every move he made could be part of a larger case, every word could be evidence. The irony was palpable. Woody had leveraged chaos to survive once, but the next battle wouldn't be in a courtroom full of cameras or a viral social media clip. It would be in the shadows, in files, interviews, and surveillance reports. The feds would methodically build their strategy, leaving no room for improvisation. Woody's instincts, honed on the streets and courtroom theatrics, would be tested in ways he had never experienced before. And yet, Woody pressed on. Fame and survival had created a paradoxical existence. He was untouchable in the eyes of some, doomed in the eyes of others. Every public appearance was a calculated risk, a performance that had to entertain while minimizing exposure. Every relationship had to be managed carefully, every decision weighed for potential fallout. The tension is undeniable. Woody stands at the intersection of fame, survival, and looming federal action. The streets watch. The fans watch. And the feds watch, patiently, strategically, and without mercy. One misstep could unravel everything, but Woody seems determined to navigate the storm, for now. The storm hadn't passed. If anything, it was just gathering strength. Woody had survived one of the most dramatic courtroom spectacles in Georgia history, but survival doesn't mean safety. The calm after the YSL trial was a mirage, a thin veil over the reality that federal prosecutors were far from done. They don't forget, and they don't take kindly to public humiliation. Woody had made himself a target, and now he had to navigate a world where every move could be his last. He was constantly aware of the eyes on him. Law enforcement wasn't just watching, they were building. Every social media post, every interview, every appearance was analyzed for inconsistencies. Analysts cross-referenced his words with old statements, surveillance footage, and reports from his associates. Anything unusual, anything that didn't align with previous narratives, could become evidence in a potential perjury or false statement case. Woody's fame had given him influence, but it had also made him transparent. The streets were no less dangerous. In Atlanta, rumors travel faster than law enforcement ever could. News of Woody's cooperation, his role in sabotaging the prosecution, and his celebrity status spread like wildfire. For some, he was a legend, a man who had outsmarted the feds. For others, he was a marked man, a liability whose actions could bring unwanted heat. Friends, enemies, and opportunists alike watched his every move. Loyalty in the underground is fragile, and Woody had made himself a lightning rod. There were whispers that federal authorities were considering multiple avenues to bring him back under scrutiny. Perjury was the obvious starting point. His courtroom antics, his admissions of fabricating statements to law enforcement, and his admitted lies created a potential legal trap. Prosecutors could argue that immunity doesn't cover deliberate deception, and that lying under oath is a federal crime in itself. Perjury charges carry serious penalties, and for someone like Woody, it could mean years in federal prison. Then there was the specter of false statements. During his cooperation over the years, Woody had provided law enforcement with information. Some true, some exaggerated, and some entirely fabricated. If prosecutors could prove he deliberately misled federal investigators, he could face multiple counts, each carrying substantial prison time. The scope of the investigation could extend back nearly a decade, turning every statement he ever made into potential evidence. Rumors also swirled about a potential federal RICO case. Unlike state-level prosecutions, federal RICO cases allow prosecutors to connect crimes across state lines, target entire networks, and impose dramatically harsher sentences. Woody's previous immunity deal would not protect him in this scenario. Every admission of prior involvement in criminal activity could be used to establish the predicate acts necessary for a RICO prosecution. The stakes were clear. This wasn't just about punishment. This was about sending a message. The psychological pressure was relentless. Woody had to maintain a public persona for his fans while keeping his street and legal movements carefully calculated. Every interview, Every podcast, every social media clip had to be measured against the potential legal ramifications. It was a high-wire act with no safety net, and one misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Even his personal relationships were under strain. Friends and former allies who had once offered protection were now cautious, unsure of what associations might expose them to federal scrutiny. Trust became a currency more valuable than money or fame. Past connections, long-forgotten interactions, and casual conversations could all become liabilities. Woody's life had become a chessboard, with every move scrutinized, analyzed, and potentially used against him. The irony was inescapable. Woody had achieved celebrity, notoriety, and a level of fame that few in the underground ever reach. Yet that fame also placed him under a microscope. The more visible he became, the more evidence he unwittingly provided. Every boast, every exaggeration, every storytelling moment could serve as a link in a chain of prosecution. Fame was both his shield and his sword, but one misstep, and it could become a noose. Street life and federal scrutiny intersected in unexpected ways. Woody had lived in an environment where loyalty and betrayal were constants. Now, that same logic applied to federal investigations. He was a known liar to authorities, a celebrity in the public eye, and someone with a history of manipulating both systems for personal gain. Prosecutors recognized the danger and the opportunity. A man who had outsmarted them once could either be coerced into full cooperation or broken by legal pressure. The media attention only compounded the stakes. Every news cycle, every viral clip, every podcast segment meant that Woody's actions weren't private. His every move was a potential headline, his every word dissected for legal significance. The court of public opinion could bolster his street credibility, but it also provided federal prosecutors with a wealth of material. The spotlight that once protected him could just as easily expose him. In the streets, paranoia became instinct. Woody had to assume that conversations could be recorded, that vehicles could be under surveillance, and that even casual meetings might be monitored. Every interaction required careful thought, every movement calculated. Mistakes weren't just mistakes, they were potential charges, potential evidence, potential traps. Legal experts analyzing the situation noted that Woody's immunity deal, while protecting him from certain state charges, left gaps. Federal prosecutors are adept at exploiting those gaps. They could build a case based on his prior admissions, public statements, and known associations. They could link him to broader criminal networks using both direct and circumstantial evidence. The pieces were all there, it was just a matter of assembling them. The psychological toll was immense. Woody had navigated the streets, manipulated prosecutors, and turned a courtroom fiasco into a public spectacle. But now, the game was changing. The stakes were higher, the rules stricter, and the players more relentless. Every day carried the tension of potential arrest, every public appearance was a gamble, and every relationship carried hidden risks. Survival was no longer about street smarts alone, it was about strategy, patience, and nerves of steel. Yet, despite the looming threats, Woody remained defiant. He continued his public appearances, continued his music promotion, and continued to live in Atlanta. This defiance could be seen as audacity, recklessness, or a calculated attempt to control his narrative. Every move was deliberate, every statement designed to maintain his brand while testing the patience of those watching him. For federal prosecutors, Woody was the ultimate test. Could they bring someone who had publicly undermined a major case to heel? Could they navigate immunity deals, social media fame, and a decade of street-level cunning to build a successful prosecution? The answer would take time, but the determination was clear. They had resources, patience, and a mission to restore credibility. Woody's story at this point is not just about survival or fame. It's about a high-stakes game where every decision carries life-altering consequences. Federal scrutiny, street politics, public attention, and personal relationships all intersect in a delicate balance. One wrong move, one misstatement, or one poorly timed action could tip the scales. The next moves in Woody's life are uncertain. Will he continue to play his bold, audacious game, risking federal scrutiny for fame and street cred? Or will the weight of impending legal action force him to retreat, recalibrate, and negotiate with authorities once more? The stakes could not be higher. Woody exists in a liminal space, caught between past victories and looming threats, between fame and infamy, between survival and prosecution. Every day is a test, every action a calculated risk. For viewers, the question remains: how long can someone like Woody play this dangerous game before the consequences catch up? If you've been following this story, you know that Lil Woody's saga is far from over. From outsmarting federal prosecutors to becoming a viral courtroom sensation, Woody's life has been a roller coaster of street power, fame, and legal chaos. But the question remains: how long can someone walk this tightrope before it collapses beneath them? Every decision, every move, and every public statement could be the spark that changes everything. And that's exactly why this story is one you need to stay tuned for. At T-Hub Media, we're not just recounting events. We're diving deep into the drama, the tension, and the high-stakes world that surrounds figures like Woody and the hip-hop community. We're bringing you the facts, the rumors, and the insider perspectives that the mainstream media often overlooks. Whether it's the streets, the courtroom, or the hidden moves behind closed doors, we break it all down in a way that keeps you on the edge of your seat. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every new twist in Woody's story, every development in the federal investigations, and every shocking revelation from Atlanta's underground will be delivered straight to you. You don't want to miss a single episode, because this isn't just another story. It's a saga of ambition, betrayal, and survival that's still being written. And we want to hear from you. Do you think Woody can outmaneuver the feds again, or is this the beginning of the end? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Your insights could spark the next discussion, and we love engaging with our T-Hub Media community on all things hip-hop, street drama, and courtroom chaos. Finally, share this video with your friends who love real stories with real suspense. Woody's tale is a reminder that in the world of power, fame, and the law, nothing is ever what it seems, and every move counts. Stick with us, stay alert, and get ready for the next chapter, because with Lil Woody, the drama never stops. T-Hub Media will be here to break it down for you, every shocking, unbelievable, and jaw-dropping moment.